Howdy y'all. Welcome back to another story time. Thanks for joining me. Today we're going to be sharing a story called The Old House, and I'll be presenting it in two parts. So this will be part one of The Old House by Hans Christian Andersen, read by me, Tennille Milan. And hopefully we can get through this without a catastrophe. Okay, part one of The Old House. In the street up there was a very old house. It was almost 300 years old. For that might be known by reading the great beam on which the date of the year was carved. Together with tulips and hop-binds, there were whole verses spelled as in former times. And over every window there was a distorted face cut out into the beam. The one story stood forward a great way over the other story, and directly under the eaves was a leaded spout with a dragon's head. The rainwater should have ran out of its mouth, but it ran out of its belly, for there was a hole in the spout. All the other houses in the street were so new and so neat, with large window panes and smooth walls, one could easily see that they would have nothing to do with the old house. And they certainly thought, how long is that old decaying thing to stand there as a spectacle in the street? And then the projecting windows, they stand so far out that no one can see from our windows what is happening in that direction. The steps are as broad as those of a palace, and as high as to a church tower. The iron railings look just like the door to an old family vault, and then they have the brass tops. That's so stupid. On the other side of the street, there were also new and neat houses, and they thought just as the others did. But at the window opposite the old house, there sat a little boy, with fresh rosy cheeks and bright eyes beaming. And he certainly liked the old house best, and that both in sunshine and in moonshine. And when he looked across at the wall where the mortar had fallen out, he could sit and he could find the strangest figures there. The strangest figures imaginable, exactly as the street had appeared before, with steps, projecting windows, pointed gables. He could see soldiers with halberds, and spouts where the water ran like dragons and serpents. That was a house to look at. And there lived an old man who wore plush breeches, and he had a coat with large brass buttons, and a wig that one could see was a real wig. Every morning there came an old fellow who put his rooms in order and went on errands. Otherwise, the old man in the plush breeches was quite alone in the old house. Now and then he came to the window and he looked out, and the little boy would nod to him, and the old man would nod back. And so they became acquaintances. And then they were friends, although they had never spoken a word to each other. But that makes no difference. The little boy heard his parents say, "The old man opposite is very well off, but he is so very, very lonely." The Sunday following, the little boy took something and he wrapped it up in a piece of paper, and he went downstairs. And he stood in the doorway. When the man who went on errands came past, he said to him, "I say, mister, will you give this to the old man over the way from me? I have 2 pewter soldiers, and this is one of them, and he shall have it, for I know that he is so very, very lonely." And the old errand man looked quite pleased, and he nodded, and he took the pewter soldier over to the old house. Afterwards there came a message, and it was to ask if the little boy himself had not a wish to come over and pay a visit. And so he got permission of his parents, and he went over to the old house. And the brass balls on the iron railing shone much brighter than ever before, One would have thought that they were polished on account of his visit. And it was as if the old carved out trumpeters, for there were trumpeters who stood in the tulips, carved out on the door. It was as if the trumpeters blew with all their might, and their cheeks appeared so much rounder than before. Yes, they blew, tra-tra-tra-tra, the little boy comes, tra-tra-tra-tra. And then the door opened. The whole passage was hung with portraits of knights in armor and ladies in silken gowns. And the armor rattled and the silken gowns rustled. And then there was a flight of stairs which went a good way upwards and a little way downwards. And then one came on a balcony which was in a very dilapidated state, sure enough, with large holes and long crevices, but grass grew there, and leaves out of them altogether, for the whole balcony outside, the yard and the walls, were overgrown with so much green stuff that it looked like a garden, but it was only a balcony. And here stood old flower pots, and the flower pots grew just as they liked. One of the pots was quite overrun on all sides with pinks, that is to say, with the green part that stood shoot by shoot, and it said quite distinctly, "The air has cherished me, and the sun has kissed me, and promised me a little flower on Sunday, a little flower on Sunday." And then they entered a chamber where the walls were covered with hog's leather and painted with golden flowers. "The gilding decays, but the hog's leather stays," said the walls. And there stood easy chairs with such high backs and so carved out, and with arms on both sides. sit down, they said. "Oh, how I creak. Now I shall certainly get the gout like the old clothes press has." And then the little boy came into the room where the projecting windows were, and where the old man sat. "I thank you for the pewter soldier, my little friend," said the old man. "And I thank you because you've come over to visit me." Thanky, or cranky, sounded from all the furniture. There was so much of it that each article stood in the other's way to get a look at the little boy. In the middle of the wall hung a picture representing a beautiful lady, so young, so glad, but dressed quite as in former times, with clothes that stood quite stiff and with powder in her hair. She neither said thanky, or cranky, but looked with her mild eyes at the little boy, who directly asked the old man, "Where did you get her?" "Yonder, at the broker's," said the old man, "where there are so many pictures hanging. No one knows or cares about them, for they are all of them buried. But I knew her in bygone days, and now she has been dead and gone these 50 years. Under the picture, in a glazed frame, there hung a bouquet of withered flowers. They were almost 50 years old, and they looked so very old. The pendulum of the clock went to and fro, the hands turned, and everything in the room became still older, but they did not observe it. "They say at home," said the little boy, "that you are so very, very lonely." "Oh," said he, "the old thoughts with what they may bring with them, they come and visit me, and now you also come. I am very well off." Then he took a book with pictures in it down from the shelf, and there were whole long processions and pageants with the strangest characters, which one never sees nowadays. Soldiers like the knave of clubs, and citizens with waving flags. The tailors had theirs with a pair of shears held by 2 lions. And the shoemakers had theirs without boots, but with an eagle that had 2 heads. For the shoemakers must have everything so that it can say, "It is a pair." Yes, that was some picture book. The old man now went into the other room to fetch preserves, apples, and nuts. Yes, it was delightful over here at the old house. "I cannot bear it any longer," said the pewter soldier, who sat on the drawers. "It is so lonely here, and it is so melancholy. But when one has been in a family circle, and one cannot accustom oneself to this life, I can bear it no longer. The whole day is so long, and the evenings are longer still. Here it is not at all as it is over at your home, where your father and mother spoke so pleasantly, and where you and all your sweet children made such a delightful noise. Nay, how lonely the old man is. Do you think he gets kisses? Do you think he gets mild eyes or a Christmas tree? He will get nothing but the grave. I can bear it no longer." "You must not let it grieve you so much," said the little boy. "I find it very delightful here. And then all the old thoughts, with what they may bring with them, they come and visit here." "Yes, it's all very well, but I see nothing of them, and I don't know them," said the pewter soldier. "I cannot bear it." "But you must," said the little boy. Then in came the old man with the most pleased and happy face, and the most delicious preserves, apples, and nuts, and so the little boy thought no more about the pewter soldier. That's the end of part 1 of The Old House. And please join me next time for part 2. Thanks for being with me, and until then, be sweet.